Welcome to Childcare Conversations, the podcast where early childhood leaders like you get real-world strategies, honest talk, and a whole lot of support. Whether you're running one center or many, we're here to help you lead with confidence and clarity. This episode is brought to you by our summer partner, Childcare Business Growth, your go-to solution for filling spots, increasing revenue, and scaling your childcare business without the burnout. We're proud to partner with a team that's as committed to your success as we are. Learn more at childcarebusinessgrowth.com. Now, let's get into today's conversation, one we think you're really going to love.
We are so excited today. We have got a guest coming in from Florida with the National Child Care Association, right? That's whose hat you actually wear, right, Cindy?
It is.
It's like sometimes you have people, I don't know, that maybe wear more than one hat. And although we have met Cindy at different times, virtually or adjacently, we got a chance to really get to know Cindy and spend time with Cindy in May in Rhode Island, of all places. And we are so excited to have her join us. And we are going to take Cindy down her non-traditional conversation. So you can find other webinars with Cindy all over the place and other podcasts where Cindy talks about advocacy. So if that's a topic, let us know. We'll be happy to have Cindy back because we'd love to do that. But also we'd be happy to share other episodes of other collaborators who've had Cindy on where she has talked about advocacy. But today we're going to talk about, being willing to grow, I think is going to be my way to word that. So with that, Cindy, introduce yourself just a little bit. We're going to get into all of your story, but talk about a little bit of your story.
All right. Well, I'm Cindy Lenhoff, and I am so glad that Carrie and Kate invited me. They're a lot of fun. I learned that in Rhode Island, and they're really smart about childcare in the industry. So that combination works well for me. I have worked in the industry for over 40 years. The majority of my career was spent with the second largest childcare provider. And I was a multi-site manager. I did start out as a preschool teacher, 3 hours a day. And that's a pretty good story if, Kate and Carrie want to go there. But having started out as a 3-hour-a-day preschool teacher in 1980 with a small family-owned company, I had the opportunity to grow with them over a 36-year period. And I retired from that career as a vice president of operations in the Southeast, which took me to Florida, where I'm at today. And
so wait. You were with the same company the whole time?
For 36 years.
Wow. Okay. So that's unheard of anymore.
It is.
I knew that you'd been in for a long time, but I don't think I put the two pieces together that it was the same company the whole time. Oh, now I'm even more excited about this topic. Okay, Carrie, I saw you. I know you have a question.
So when you were doing 3 hours a day, was that you were a relief teacher, or was it more of a Mother's Day Out program?
It was actually, I was a 3-hour-a-day preschool teacher from 9 to noon for a La Petite Academy in South Oklahoma City that is still there today. It is getting ready to celebrate its 50th year of serving that community. And I did not want to work full time. I was a stay-at-home mom. And I actually went to check out enrolling my then 3-year-old in a preschool program. And they were opening a brand new center in Oklahoma City. And I saw the sign. I was new there. My husband had gotten transferred with his job. And I wanted her to go to preschool while her brother was in first grade, but not all day. And but while I was there, I guess I asked a lot of good questions. And at some point, the director, who was just really very welcoming and excited about her program, which was Montessori based, by the way, back in that day and time, not Montessori school, but Montessori based. So we were, already allowing children to explore and do what we called work jobs,
Mhm.
on their own. But she asked me if I had ever worked with children, and I said, well, I teach I teach Sunday school, 3 to 5 year olds. Well, in 1980, that was like a degree. It was like a CDA. It was like, because none of those things existed. And she got real excited and said, well, would you be interested in working? And I said, well, maybe a little. And she said, well, your daughter could come to preschool for free, but not be in your class. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, that might not be so bad. Then I can make sure these people are somebody I want to leave my child with. And so I applied, and I got interviewed. I didn't get hired for the new school, but I got hired for the existing one. And it was back in the day. What I learned later was the oil industry was booming in Oklahoma,
Mhm.
and they were having trouble getting, you know, staff. Oh, deja vu. Um, maybe not quite as serious it is as it is now. But the remarkable thing I think is that, and I used to tell this recruitment story because as time went on and we hit those pockets of time, and especially in my last few years where, getting staff was difficult, I said, I am a recruitment story. I was recruited when I was taking a tour because something I said or did caught the attention of the director. I don't,
Well, I want to point out the one thing that you said that caught my eye, speaking of recruitment stories, because I think it's often missed. Carrie and I have sat in with a lot of staff this time of year where people are training new staff and bringing on new staff, is the number of directors and owners that get really myopic on how they hire staff, that staff have to be full time, that staff have to have a degree, and all of these kinds of things. And I love your recruitment story. I love the fact that you're like, no, I only want to come in 3 hours. And they were okay with that. I love that you didn't have a degree when you started and that you didn't have all these things that would, in a lot of professions, mean that you cost more money.
right?
Right. And so when owners and directors are thinking about those job postings, and well, really it's job descriptions, right? Like people keep forgetting the difference between a want ad and a job description, but that's a whole other episode.
I know.
And but you came in with an interest, you came in with a passion, and well, obviously that director knew what they were doing because you stuck around for another 36 years or another 35 years, I guess, right? And, continued to move up the ladder. So I think that hopefully whoever's listening, if you get nothing else out of this episode, don't rule out parents and don't rule out part-time staff. I mean, I would much rather have 40 part-time staff than 20 full-time staff because
Amen.
if somebody leaves, I can hire one out of 39. It's different to hire that one out of 20, just because, it's a full day and you can make half day shifts work. Because
You
usually you can
can.
find somebody who, for a week, I'm sure that there were times if somebody said, hey, Cindy, this week so and so is going on vacation. Can I get you to stay till 2? And you're like,
Absolutely.
for a week.
Well, and
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of similar to my first grown-up job in the industry. I was at a center that had a morning shift and an afternoon shift. It was all it's an accredited program. It had amazing curriculum, but there was a shift of people who came in, whether you were lead or assistant, you either came in at 7 or 7:30 and you left at 12 or 12:30. And then the other half came in at 12 or 12:30 and left at 5:30 or 6. And so your kid, in each classroom, the children would have more than two people that they had to get to know, but it made it such that the kids had multiple positive caregivers. They had two primary ones, a morning one and an afternoon
Right.
one. So in that way, it was the same as a lot of other programs, but there might be as many as 10 different staff over the course of a week because it was associated with the university. Most of the people attending were the children of university people. It wasn't associated with the university. That's just who was there.
Right. I understand. I've worked in college towns, and
Yeah.
it is a little different staffing model.
But what
It's
made
a
it great, I thought, was when a staff person left, you were only losing at most 25 hours a week of that person. So the
right.
children still had their other, 4,
Familiar
5, 6
faces.
people that they knew. And it wasn't such a loss where if you have 2 people working 40 hours a week and one person working, 6 to cover lunch breaks, then when one of those 40-hour-a-week people leave, that is a huge loss for the kids. And I'm sure that there's research papers, et cetera. But what I remember from all the research papers I've read over the past 5 years is that having consistent caregivers is
Right.
what's important. Not that everybody who takes care of the kids, but having ones that the children are attached to. And by having the part-time staff, you allow the child to form multiple attachments.
Exactly, and different personalities. And we're all human, and some children connect better with some personalities than others, and vice versa. Um, Again, if you make it consistent, it works. And the problem with the 40-hour week employee, when every position is 40 hours, and oh, which is exactly what you pointed out, is that when one drops out, there's nobody to cover it without overtime. Overtime is exhausting
Yep.
for teachers in early childhood, and it also is very expensive. So it becomes an operational issue because you have tired teachers, and tired teachers make mistakes. And we don't want that for the teacher. We don't want that for the child. And then also, we are an industry that we can't afford overtime. So you can avoid it with a scheduling model that works, which over time, I actually developed one that our company rolled out. It was called the unemotional schedule. And it really did work. And we didn't have to worry about, all those lunch breaks either, all those hour lunch breaks.
I mean, lunch breaks and vacations are yeah, those were things I hated to schedule around. And so when I came to work for Carrie, and I was a parent. My child was in her program before I went to work for Carrie. And one of the things I loved from day one is that Carrie's solution, and even after 25 years of sharing the story, we still get people who've never heard of or like marvel at the concept. But, Carrie just closed the school 2 weeks a year. So that's when every parent and every staff person had their 2 weeks of vacation. And so, where else do you get to
Wow.
start in this industry and immediately have 2 weeks a year of vacation? And it was during the week of 4th of July and the week between Christmas and New Year, where a lot of families were already taking off some of that time, might have already had some holiday pay. And so rarely, and because this coming in from the get-go, there
Right.
was never a um there was never
There
a
wasn't
question.
confusion. There wasn't a
Yeah.
whole lot of confusion. And everybody got 2 weeks of vacation from the minute that they started working. It depended whether it was paid or unpaid, whether they were on probation or
Right.
not, but you still got 2 weeks of vacation. So I'd have
When
all,
everybody wants vacation anyway,
yeah,
because I found that to be true. And those are the two lowest attended weeks in
yep,
all of childcare. I mean, for 36 years, I saw it consistently. And ultimately, everybody wanted off, and you were trying to figure out who you were going to say no to. What
Well,
a great
not only
idea.
that, my favorite are the parents that want to not have to pay the week their child's there, and those kinds of things. And so this was just a way that no, you pay and the staff get paid. Like,
Yeah.
do you pay your electric bill? And then, we've got strategies that we used from the get-go related to that, on it being annual tuition versus monthly or weekly tuition. It was
yeah.
always annual.
Just
A lot
like
of this,
college, that's what we used to say.
yep.
You pay tuition based on a semester, and not a week.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, part of it came from I'm relatively conflict avoidant, and part of it came from I knew that I wanted everybody to have 2 weeks of vacation and that is hard to do in childcare. And so I was like, well, we'll just do this from the beginning, and they're 6 months apart and my staff won't get overstressed because once every 6 months, sorry, not 6 weeks, once every 6 months, the building is closed, and it, it was the cheapest and best recruiting tool that I had in my toolbox back in the early 90s, mid 90s, was to say, the day you start, you've got 2 weeks of vacation scheduled. And people were like, what, really? And I was like, yeah, we've already got your 2 weeks of vacation schedule. Once you've been with us for 6 months, you get this much more, and all of that. And I had people who were getting 5 and 6 weeks of paid vacation with me by the time I sold my last school. And I didn't have much staff turnover. I hear so much about staff turnover, and I'm like, okay, what are you doing to make them feel appreciated? I buy them pizza every Friday. That's not saying that they're respected. It's not saying that you're honoring them as a professional. It's saying you're aware that they have a digestive tract. Like, that's all buying them pizza every Friday does. Show them the respect of, you deserve PTO. You deserve time away from this job to recharge your batteries. Also, I expect you to get your annual training. That's not my job. That's your job. If you want to keep this job, you'll get your annual training.
Amen to that. Um,
I'm like,
and
I'm feeling a soapbox coming.
That was something I had to really work with directors on, when I was the multi-site leader, was to, when they would say, well, they aren't getting their training. What do I do? Well, you might want to tell them that when their year is up and they haven't met the state requirement, or and later in my career, the accredited requirement for training, their job will be no more. And you have to tell them that, and you have to put it in writing. And have you given them, I used to say, just provide them with training information, where to go. Sign up as a group for a conference. There's nothing like, we used to have great conferences in Oklahoma, and we could usually even get, some help from the agencies to pay for a staff to attend. And so, if they're not going to get it, they can't continue to work. Well, I'll be sure to teach her. We'll start looking now if you think that's going to happen.
I love that. I think that's great words of advice. But I think it's even better advice because NCCA, I think they have a conference, don't they, Cindy?
They do. In fact, we're preparing for it now. Our conference is March 19th through the 21st in Memphis, Tennessee, at the historic Peabody Hotel, where they have the little duck parade every day. So we're really excited about that. And I know that I'm going to see you two ladies there. We
Yep.
definitely look forward to having you back because you were presenters at our last conference. So it's going to be fun. We had great fun at our last one in some of the evening events where, people gathered with celebrating the 80s and dancing and karaoke and trivia. But more importantly, we networked, we learned together. We also developed friendships with people that help us understand that we're not alone and that somebody may have a solution. Look at the solution that, Carrie just mentioned, that you brought up, Kate, about vacations. That one idea could really help somebody if they're ready to receive something new. And I think that's the value of conferences. And since our conferences are geared towards independently owned childcare centers and homes, mostly centers, but homes are invited as well. They don't have a lot of camaraderie unless they seek it at a conference. So I can't emphasize enough, whether it's our conference or another conference that's available to your listeners, is go. You will not regret it. And one of the things that came out of our last conference, because we chose to have snacks all day, snacks and drinks. Nobody had to buy snacks or drinks. And we fed lunch, breakfast and lunch every day, and heavy hors d'oeuvres at night. Was that people they were so excited. They said they felt like they were treated like they were important. And it's like, because you are. And we will continue that tradition.
Well,
Is
I've
that,
got a great tidbit for that too, for everybody who's listening who has to file taxes. Your meals are not 100% deductible. So find conferences where the meals are included because your conference fee is 100% deductible. So there's my tax tip for the day. Okay.
oh, that's a great, listen, everybody has to know everything because it's the only way to, continue in an industry that is sometimes struggles with sustainability. And again, reach out and touch people, whether
Absolutely.
it's a
So if you're
podcast
coming to
or
the
a conference.
conference, you have time right now, A, to sign up or to watch for sign up, and B, get some business cards and bring them with you. I know that a lot of people love the digital blink and whatever, but you know what? You've still got people out there who are going to be visual and tactile learners, and your visual learners want to see that physical card. Doesn't have to have your picture on it, but if it does, it's even better. Give them something in that card that reminds them of you and give it to them so they can hold it so your kinesthetic learners will be able to feel it. We won't talk about the stacks I got sitting on my desk, but considering how many conferences Carrie and I go to in a year, it's not nearly as many. And I totally respect. I do have a digital business card. I will blink and do those things with folks. But the ones I remember to actually follow up and keep in contact with are the ones who gave me the physical card because it gets shuffled and I go, oh wait, I actually called that person. Okay. Oh, haven't called that person. And
I do the same thing. I am the visual, kinesthetic, old-fashioned card
yep.
because I will more than likely revisit your card than I will another something on a digital piece.
Because you
As it
got to
is,
remember which app it was. I mean, that's part of it now too, is like I think there's at least 4 or 5 of those little digital cards. And so I have to remember where it is. And if I didn't stop and put notes right then and there in my phone, I may totally forget who you are, where you're located, what we talked about, or anything where I can with a business card. And a lot of times, Carrie and I will, maybe at lunch or in the afternoon or maybe at the evening, we'll stop and kind of try to remember what we could remember about people. And we'll be like, hey, we talked to this person. I think it was this, and this is what we talked about. And so we'll both take notes on the back of our cards so that we can remember who people are afterwards. So,
that's great. You have each other for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing when it comes to conferences is if you can go with a buddy. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
and what I think is fabulous is if your school is running well enough that both like the owner and the director can leave and the assistant director is running the program, or it's the owner and the assistant director. Maybe they trade off. One time it's the owner and the director, and one time it's the owner and the assistant director, because somebody has to run the school unless you can close the school down for the conference, which I think most of us can't do. But if you can take 2 members of the leadership team, you're much more likely to implement any of the cool new ideas you got if there's 2 members of the team that go. If you can't, because you're a sole proprietor and you just have an assistant director who is also your toddler teacher, and so you don't have somebody else you can bring with, find another director or owner that might be interested in going and have them go with you. So at least you have somebody to talk to after dinner and go, ooh, did you talk to this person? I did. This is, and so you can share the information because you're much more likely to retain it if you talk it through.
And
all right.
sometimes you
So,
hear different things. You
Yes.
oh,
got
not
two
only that,
individuals.
absolutely, but you can listen to our episodes. We have lots of directors from all over the country who've been on our episodes. You can also go over to Childcare Director's Chair with Erica Sacosio, listen to her episodes. You might find somebody on one of those that resonates. Go into the episode show notes and see if you can't figure out how to contact them. I'm creepy. I do stalk people on social media, so I know I'm not the only person. Go
That's
find
great.
these people. They want to connect. That's why they're on these podcasts, webinars, and stuff like that. It's not so that they're not trying to hide in a box. And go force yourself to meet them. And chances are, if Carrie is there, or I'm there, or Erica's there, or Cindy's there, we would be happy to say A, hello, and B, help you find your conference buddy for that conference. Because then you have you have a reason to go, for somebody who's keeping you accountable, to actually show up to the workshops and not just take it like, I'm okay with a working vacation, don't get me wrong. But if you've come to the conference, I mean, we want you to enjoy the poolside, but we also want you to come to the workshops.
Right. Well, it's going to be a little chilly in March, so we probably won't have poolside, but you never know what could distract someone. But one
Yeah,
of the things that we did talk
There's a
about,
bar in the hotel, let's be
yes,
honest.
yes. One of the things we have talked about with our conference committee is making sure that we build in some opportunity for those coming from Texas to meet, those coming from, Virginia to meet. So if there are any lone wolves, or even if there's groups of people, again, there's value in, talking to other people, as you both know, that have worked in this industry, and get them out of their silos, because that's what can happen to those that are independently owned. They don't
absolutely.
get out of their silos. And you just mentioned how having a member of management besides the owner, and maybe even the director and the assistant. One of the things that I found years ago, and again, we do have owners that have multi-sites. And I found that I would have a director meeting, and the director would, they were supposed to transfer the information, to the assistant. It just didn't happen. So I learned early, on, that I just did the same meeting for assistant directors, because one, they were my future and directors, in case someone, left to marry an Air Force captain and move out of state. Things happen.
I'm sure that never happened to you, Cindy.
Yes, it did. And one year it happened to me like 3 times in one year, that people actually legitimately, you know, moved out of state, and I didn't have a good bench. And I have went into areas, I even did some consulting, and found that the bench weakness is going to kill our industry.
Well, I,
Yep.
I I personally love that, and that again, bench building is definitely something that's a passion for Carrie and I, and so that could easily be its own topic. But I want to talk. I realize we've not actually gone down what we said we were going to talk about. So somehow in your career path, you went from a 3 hour a day teacher to a vice president of operations over, a large regional area. I'm sure there are some steps in those 36 years that we have not talked about. So, how did you, like, did you seek these out? Like, again, we know that at the time, a lot of the credentials that exist now didn't exist then.
Mm-mm.
So, did you go looking for these, or did people just go, "Oh, Cindy's got her stuff together. I want Cindy to do it." Or how did you move up, and how quickly did some of that happen?
Well, after I had been a preschool teacher for about 6 months, my director kept coming to me and saying, "Are you ready to be full-time yet?" And I kept saying, "No, not yet. I'm not sure I'll ever be ready to be full-time, but I'll let you know." Well, ironically, my husband got laid off from his job, and after I'd been there a year working 3 hours a day. However, I did fill in during the summer for field trips. It's like you said, they would ask me to work periodically, and I did, over my 3 hours. And I thought, well, I better pick up some hours. And so I told my director I was ready. And of course, she jumped right on that. And had worked there a couple of years, and the company started building more sites in that city. And my director was going to become a district manager because the district manager we had at that time didn't live in Oklahoma City, but they were planning more growth. And she came to me and she said, I'm going to recommend you to be a director. I looked around and I was like, is there somebody else in the room? Um, and she said, you have caught on to everything, you know, that we do here and then some. And she had taught me how to do the books and not only my teaching job, and we had at that time, she also was a woman ahead of her time because she enrolled us in some coursework that was through Oklahoma State University that later became a CDA credential. But it was just a ladder of learning, and they had some grant money, and all we had to do was just sign up to go and pay like, $4 for a book. So that whole time, we were being trained. And then she trained me, like I said, on how to do the bookkeeping, which, was manual. We didn't have computers, how to collect money from parents that didn't want to pay without, being mean, and how to, be in compliance with licensing. She just taught me all the things. And I think she was teaching a lot of us, but evidently I demonstrated something that others, because there was only one other person on her staff that she recommended um, to become a director.
Okay, so let me get this right. When there was literally paper, pencil, and spreadsheet paper, like it wasn't digital,
Right.
she took the time to teach you how to run that part of the business.
Yes, because you know why? Well, she was a smart lady, for one thing. She liked to take vacations. She didn't want to be there full time. I mean, she was there full time, but usually in the summer. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get a drink.
Okay, while you're drinking, I'm just trying to verify. So she actually took vacations and left. And so to do that, she recognized that she needed to train people to fill in for her.
I know. What a concept, right?
I love this concept. Carrie, this is,
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of directors would go, no, no, no. If I train somebody else to do this job, then they're going to take my job and then I'll be out of work.
I just had one of my old directors, and she wasn't old in years, but we go way back. And of course, like most of us, she has evolved into a great leader. And she owns her own center now. But I was her district manager, and she was a director that I inherited in a regrouping of states because I was in 12 different states over my career. And she needed a good assistant and to really take her program to where she wanted it to be. And she just didn't want to go there. And it wasn't long ago we were having a conversation because we've been friends now for over 30 years. And again, she owns her own center, she owns a consulting. And she said, believe it or not, remember when you were pushing me to get a better assistant and somebody that, could actually do my job? She said, I thought it was because someday you'd want to replace me. Like, no. And then I had one director who kept telling me she was not going to she didn't need an assistant. And I finally said, well, as you're a regional director, guess what? I need for you to have an assistant, because what if you get sick and have to go on sick leave? Or, you may not think you need a vacation, but guess what? You're going to probably need a vacation at some point. Well, lo and behold, that director who finally gave in and said, okay, you win. Um, she went on to have twins while she was a director.
Hmm.
And it was like,
Did
see,
she want some time off for that?
yes.
She
And I
did.
said, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because I learned that lesson. I learned that I couldn't multi-site manage and be their substitute. Now, it was the lesson learned, from being their substitute. And it was also something I had to teach when I became the VP, well, the divisional director, and then the VP was regional directors, district managers, you are not subs for your programs. Your job is to help them get, subs or a schedule that allows for subbing within your schedule, which is, what we were kind of talking about earlier, Carrie,
Yeah.
when everybody isn't 40 hours. So, that is definitely, huge. And I think it's still a problem in our industry is that people
I
want to
think
micromanage.
I think it might be more of an issue now. I really hear a lot more programs now saying, "Oh, I only hire full-time staff." And I had 4 schools, and yes, I liked to have a full-time person in every classroom, but I wanted them to have 2 part-time assistants. I didn't want 2
Right.
full-time people because it locked me into those people.
Yes.
Like I didn't have any flexibility. I didn't have an ability for somebody to work half, to work to cover somebody else's shift when somebody was out sick or, decided to go have twins. Like I don't understand the move. I guess from some perspective I do, because I think part of it is that move to professionalize the industry, and that
I think the move is they just want it simple math. And I mean, there's so much software out there that makes payroll easy, that makes scheduling easier. I won't say it's easy, but I mean, one thing, and I'm using Cindy as an example again, it is so much easier to recognize and promote those part-time staff. But once somebody, if you bring somebody in full-time, there's only so many places you can take them in most organizations. Where if
Right.
they're part-time and they come in as a teacher that's a part-time teacher or a part-time assistant director, you're setting up from the beginning that not every role has to be full-time. And a lot of independently owned programs probably could use a part-time curriculum coordinator or a part-time insert, training coordinator or whatever. So you can have these roles where people can still be promoted and challenged and encouraged to learn and to grow without it necessarily meaning that they have to be full time because they might have families. One of
Right.
Carrie's favorite stories that we love to tell is the person who bought Carrie's last story was actually a substitute who had been a grandma who only wanted to come in a few hours a week. And she ended up being a full-time infant teacher and later bought the last program. So, you just never know when you're going to find people. And if you start going, I'm only going to hire people with a degree full time, you're really
You're
narrowing
going to be understaffed. You're going to be understaffed.
and
And
therefore
it's like
stressed and overwhelmed. And
it's like piecing a puzzle together. And a consulting job that I had after I retired, in trying to help, someone with their business, uh, was teaching that concept of piecing together, staff again to have that consistency. And this one of the locations that this individual had was in a college town. And so you have those college students who come in and, they have these classes that are all over the board. But I
Yep.
can work every Monday, Tuesday, and Friday in the morning. Okay. And then I can work every, Wednesday and Thursday in the afternoon. Well, trust me, I'm gonna find somebody from that same college, and you might even help me as the person I just hired, to piece that together. And once I was able to demonstrate, because she didn't want to hire from the college at all, because they couldn't work full time and they weren't, they had too many things they had to keep up with. And I said, we're going to hire them and they're not going to work 40 hours and they're going to offset each other and they're going to, be the TA in the room, the teacher assistant.
Yep.
Again, I just have a really mental block, into the 40-hour, everybody works 40 hours. I can't manage a lunch schedule when everybody's working 40 hours. It is just beyond my brain, to do
absolutely.
that.
Well, Cindy, I am so glad that you took the time to join us today, and we'll definitely have you on for more conversations. Carrie, I know that you have something you want to say.
Well, I want to say that you need to find the professional organization that works for you, that has your people in it. We were talking about this earlier. Find your people and go to their conferences and subscribe to this podcast. There we go.
I highly recommend both. So it's a pleasure, as always, talking with passionate, knowledgeable, experienced individuals that did what I did and just, learned what to do to keep people moving in the right direction so that they had great programs operationally and financially, because that's what I want to remind people of. You got to be able to do both. And if you get a good operation going, for instance, scheduling, correctly, it's going to pay off financially because you're going to have enrollments because of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Absolutely.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And be creative in how you're hiring and staffing. Cindy was a fluke of a hire. Who would have thought somebody asking intelligent questions on a tour would become someone who worked for that business for 36 years? I bet none of us think that when we're doing a tour. Sometimes we're just like, hurry up, I got to get through this because I got to redo the lunch schedule because I had 2 people call out. Be present. Do a good interview. You might have the next Cindy Linhoff in your building asking about the toilet training practices of your preschool classroom.
I love that. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. You're
We
fun.
will see you
ladies.
next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in. We love bringing you real talk and fresh insight from the world of early childhood education. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all of the latest episodes. And if you're planning a conference, training, or special event, Kate and Carrie would love to speak to your audience. You can learn more about their keynote sessions and workshops at kateandcarrie.com. If you learned something today, share the show and leave us a review below. We'll see you next time on Childcare Conversations.